This podcast is sponsored by BetterHelp. After experiencing trauma, I went to therapy, and my therapist guided me through a difficult time in my life. They helped me understand what was happening and provided me with tools to cope and find my own strength and resilience. Their experience and compassion were invaluable and enabled me to rebuild my life and move forward. I strongly believe in the power of therapy to help people through difficult times. BetterHelp connects you with a licensed therapist who is trained to listen and give you helpful, unbiased advice. First, you go to their site. You can use my link, betterhelp.com/resilience. You answer a few questions, and BetterHelp will match you to a professional who has years of experience helping people with struggles just like yours. Let BetterHelp connect you to a therapist who can support you, all from the comfort of your own home. Visit betterhelp.com/resilience or choose podcast, then notes on resilience during sign up and enjoy a special discount on your first month.
It's taking agency away from us. And we have to regain our agency over our attention. And we can control our attention. And there are ways to do it. Now, if you're just at the mercy of your device, checking email, because we've developed habits. And to listeners out there, if you feel like you're alone and you're the only one checking your text, email, smartphone, social media, you are not alone.
Hello, and welcome to Notes on Resilience. I'm your host, Manya Chilinsky, and today we have another episode in our series on technology and well-being, and we are speaking with Gloria Mark. She is the Chancellor's Professor Emerita at the University of California, Irvine, and the author of the book Attention Span, a groundbreaking way to restore balance, happiness, and productivity. And we talked about attention and our digital devices and how that relates to well-being and how we should be managing our attention. I think you're going to really learn a lot listening to this episode. Thanks for being here. Gloria, it's such a pleasure to be talking with you today. Thank you for being here.
Thank you so much for having me.
Before we dive into the topic, start with my usual question. If you could have dinner with any historical figure, who would it be and why?
I would have dinner with the psychologist Kurt Lewin.
Ooh.
Now, Kurt Lewin is known as the father of social psychology.
Mm-hmm.
And I would have dinner with him because I think he is the most profound thinker in the history of psychology. I'm very biased because I've been very influenced by his work, but I would see that as an opportunity to just pick his mind and get his wisdom, and his insights are just so very powerful. Definitely enjoy that.
All right, that's a good one. I wish I could make any of these happen because everybody's got such great answers, and I know that there would be some incredible insights from him. Well, it's time to dive in, and we're thinking about the concept of attention. And there's one of these stats that I know you have in your book where you talk about our attention span averages only 47 seconds on a screen, and that attention span is actually shrinking. Oh my gosh, what's happening to us?
Obviously, what's happening is technology, right? So we've tracked attention spans on screens for the last 20 years. And when we first started measuring this in 2004, we found attention spans on screens to average about 2.5 minutes. In 2012, we found it to average about 75 seconds. And then since about 2016, we found it averages 47 seconds, and others have replicated this as well. And we've used very objective techniques to measure this, computer logging. So many things have happened, right? In the last 20 years, there's been the invention of the smartphone. There's been Facebook came on the scene in 2003 and followed by a lot of other social media giants. E-commerce took off. Good chunk of news sites had already been online, but just the number of news sites has proliferated, and news changes, headlines change practically by the second. We're also social beings, and we're very influenced by social dynamics in real life, and the same kinds of social dynamics in real life actually come into play when we're on our devices. So things like peer influence, especially for younger people, right? Makes that, you better pay attention to your texting and Instagram because you've got peers who are watching you, and if you don't keep up with it, there will be social consequences. There's identity. People want to maintain identity. They want to do what's called impression management, which means they're online a lot of time, making sure that their identity reflects not necessarily who they are in real life, but who they want to be, how they want to be portrayed on the internet to others. So there's influence, there's power, of course. We pay attention to our emails because if your manager or someone who's higher up in the social hierarchy then you sends you an email, boy, you better be on your toes to answer it. So there's that. And of course, personality plays a role because different personality types are more susceptible to distractions and have shorter attention spans. So it's very complex. And I didn't mention algorithms, of course. Algorithms have become a lot more sophisticated in the last 20 years. And they're everything we do when we go online, all the likes that we give, the websites we visit, our digital traces are captured and profiles are created of us. And then tech companies and ad companies use these profiles to create notifications and ads to try to capture our attention. And they're successful. But I want to make sure to say that that's not the sole reason. It's not just algorithms, right? There's many, many other factors for why our attention has diminished.
Right. Well, how, especially when we're thinking of devices and this diminishing attention span, what is that doing to us as either to our brains, to us as social beings? What is the impact on us?
The impact, in my belief, is that we're losing patience to be able to focus for a long period of time. And I was at an art museum recently here in New York City, the Whitney Museum. And the museum guide had us look at a painting for a full minute, and we're not used to it. We're used to glancing at paintings and moving on. And we looked at it, and then the guide asked us to look at it longer. And all these meanings started emerging just from taking the time to look at it. And it just really struck home to me how we don't give ourselves the opportunity to pay attention to things for very long periods of time. Social media platforms are designed in such a way that they constrict the amount of content that we can put in, not just that we can produce, but also what we consume, right? TikTok videos change very frequently. If you look at news sites, they give you the number of minutes it takes to read the article, right? And of course, they're crafted to be able to attract us because this article will only take 3 minutes or 4 minutes to read.
Right. Oh, wow. And I think about myself and my fight against using devices. I have an iPhone. I have an iPad. I'm not saying that I'm not in the digital world. For example, however, I like to go for long walks on urban trails and things, and almost none of them have the ability to have a real useful printed paper map. It's here's how you can follow us on your phone or in this hiking app. And I think I am desperately trying to get out and see the world and get away from my device. And so many things are pulling us back that the only way you can do it, or the most functional way you can do it, is somehow with a device.
That's right. Our whole lives seem to be centered around the use of devices, right? It's this kind of coevolution. Devices have evolved to serve as tools for us. And in turn, we have become more and more reliant on our devices. And we need our devices for QR codes, to read menus, to access our medical records online, right? There are so many ways that using devices have entered our lives. And, it's not bad. It provides us a benefit. The problem is when it strips away certain things that make us human. That's when the problem arises.
And I also think there is a problem too in that not everybody actually has a device or a smart device or smartphone or in a position to want to be using it. And I was just talking about the QR code menu situation with a friend who went to a restaurant, didn't remember to bring the phone. They had a QR code and it was almost a fight to see if they could find out what was on the menu.
They didn't have a paper menu.
They didn't.
Yeah.
Well, how does someone maintain well-being within this digital world when we've got these devices and it is shrinking our attention span?
Yeah. That's such an important question. And it's something I think about a lot. So we're so wrapped up in using our devices that we don't realize that it's taking agency away from us. And we have to regain our agency over our attention, right? And we can control our attention. And there are ways to do it. Now, if you're just at the mercy of your device, checking email, because we've developed habits. And to listeners out there, if you feel like you're alone and you're the only one checking your text, email, smartphone, social media, you are not alone. Everybody is doing it. I have met so many people who also have developed these kinds of habits. So it's really important to understand that we can take back control over our attention. And when we do that, we can also have more of a handle on our well-being, because we can be very stressed with all the information we're trying to consume and keep up with. It's a boatload of information, and there's no way we can possibly and humanly keep up with that information. So it's important to realize that we can step away. We have the power to step away. And we also have the power that when we use our devices, we can treat these merely as tools. We can determine how often we check our email or our texting. We don't have to be subservient to our devices. So we can change habits.
Yes. It is not necessarily easy to break that habit. I mean, I think some people use the term digital diet, right? When they're talking about this, to kind of manage that information overload or to reduce distractions. What are some strategies for actually doing that and being reasonably successful in reducing our use?
So a technique that I practice, and other people have done this as well, is what I call meta-awareness. Let me explain what that means. So many things we do on our devices are automatic. So we see our smartphone next to us and we automatically pick it up and swipe it open. We have an urge to check email or an urge to check news, especially these days. And we just switch to that news site practically without thinking, right? It becomes an automatic kind of behavior. And The idea of meta-awareness is to be aware of what you're doing as it's unfolding and to become aware of when we're doing automatic actions. And by the way, we found in my research that about half the time people self-interrupt, right? We tend to blame, these notifications and the email and text chimes. Half the time we interrupt ourselves through some kind of urge to look something up on the web, or an urge to go to social media or news or go shopping or whatever. And so practicing meta-awareness means to probe ourselves, to ask ourselves questions so that we can recognize the triggers that cause us to act on these automatic behaviors. So, for example, if I have an urge to check news, and these days we are checking news around the clock, there's a lot happening. I recognize that urge and I ask myself simple questions. Do I need to look at the news right now? No. The answer is no. Is it going to provide me value? No, it's maybe a very marginal value compared to when I looked at news in the morning. Or I might ask myself, I might try to evaluate if I'm feeling fatigued, because we know this from research, that when we feel fatigued, we are more susceptible to distractions, not just external distractions through, say, notifications, but internal distractions as well. It's harder for us to keep on track when we're mentally fatigued. And so it's important to probe ourselves. And if you have this urge to get off track and move away from your task, you can also ask yourself, am I fatigued? Do I need a break? Taking sufficient breaks are so important to restore our attentional resources. We have limited attentional resources, and when these start to get drained, it's harder for us to use a part of our mind that's called executive function to keep us on track. So take a break. Use that as an indicator that, whoa, it's time to step away. Best thing to do, if you can, is go outside if you can. If not, move around, get up, move around. And, sometimes it helps to do some very simple rote activity, something that's easy on your mind. Some people report knitting is a great activity. It's rote, it's easy, it settles the mind. So if you have some easy rote activity that makes you happy, and we also know from research that doing these kinds of simple rote activities makes people happy.
Yes. As a knitter, I can confirm. Yes.
Okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. Yeah. So practicing meta awareness is one technique. Another technique that works, and we know that this works for helping people to stop smoking and lose weight, and that's called practicing forethought. And that means imagining your future self. Now, when we're on our devices and when we have an urge to say, go to social media, and we know that when we go to social media, it's going to turn into a rabbit hole. We're going to be there for a long time. Pause and imagine your future self at the end of the day. Maybe it makes more sense to imagine yourself at the end of the week if you have a really big deadline on Friday that you have to meet. But I find it very helpful to imagine where I want to be this evening and how do I want to feel. Feeling is really important. I want to feel rewarded. I want to see myself sitting on the couch, having finished my deadline and feeling relaxed, relieved, rewarded, happy. That's how I want to feel. And that image of that visualization of myself sitting on that couch, or maybe going out to eat somewhere because now I have the time to do it, that's enough to help keep us on track. So practicing forethought is important.
I like that one, the practicing forethought, because we know that it's hard to focus on a future goal, and it's much more satisfying to do something in the moment. But if we're thinking about how am I going to feel 6 hours from now or 2 days from now versus 2 years from now, that is an easier lift, I think, because I can't imagine how I'll feel at dinner time if I haven't done the things that I need to do.
That's right. You will feel stressed, right? So
Yes.
more concrete your visualization is, the more powerful
Mm-hmm.
it can be. So think of a very concrete visualization of where you want to be this evening and how you want to feel.
Yes. As you were talking, I realized, without necessarily recognizing what I was doing, I have taken some steps to break the cycle, in that on my phone, I turned off all the little badges that show you have 1, 12, 3,000 unread email or social posts, so that it's not telling me that there's something, it's not calling my attention to, you need to read me. And so I make the conscious choice to say, oh, I'm now going to check X. I still sometimes do, perhaps more often than I should, but it definitely makes it easier to ignore that there might be an email if there's not something pinging me saying there's an email waiting for you.
Absolutely. That's one of the easiest things that people can do, is to change your environment, change your physical environment and change your digital environment. And if you really have to work, you want to create a physical environment that's free of distraction. So you want to work in a quiet place where you won't be interrupted. You don't want to have your phone near you, right? Put your phone in another room or lock it in a drawer. And for your digital environment, one of the easiest things that people can do is just turn off notifications. You can also use ad blockers. You can hide apps that you tend to use. Like if you have a social media app or a news app, hide it deep inside of a folder so that it's going to be hard to get to. So there's a lot of techniques that we can do to restructure our digital environment that make it easier for us to focus.
Well, and one of the things I was reading about in your information is how long it takes us to come back to focusing after we've been interrupted. So if we're trying to get something done and we keep getting pulled away, it's going to take us twice, if not more than that, longer to accomplish the task.
That's right, because every time our attention gets pulled away, we have to reorient back to the task. And, I like to use this metaphor of having an internal whiteboard in the mind. And every time we start a task, you need to bring up all the information you need to work on that task. And so use this metaphor of writing that information on this internal whiteboard in your mind. And then you suddenly switch to another task. You're erasing that mental whiteboard and you're writing up the new information you need for this new task. And then you switch again and you're erasing and rewriting, and you keep doing that. And not only does it take extra time to reconstruct the information you need to do that original task that you've been interrupted from, but it also creates fatigue, right? It uses mental energy to keep switching like that. And I'll also mention that we know from a lot of research that it creates errors. People make more errors when they're interrupted, when they switch, and it also causes stress. And we also know that as well. Years of laboratory studies have shown that when people are continually switching attention, we know blood pressure rises. There's a physiological marker that indicates people are stressed. We know in real world environments, in our research, we've tested people using heart rate monitors. We know that stress goes up when people's attention is shifting. And people report subjectively that they feel more stressed. So overall, it's not a good idea to veer off of a task.
Right. So, we're getting close to the end of time, and of our time, not the end of all time, the end of our time today. And as I'm listening to you, I'm thinking someone could walk away and think that the message is technology is bad. These digital technologies are bad for us. That isn't what you're saying, is it?
Absolutely not. And I want to be very clear that we're living in a technological world that has provided us with so many benefits. Mm-hmm. I'm really a big supporter of tech. And my message is that we have to learn how to live with tech in an intelligent way. We can't have tech taking over our lives, but we have to be the ones in control. We have to be smart in how we use tech. And we have to realize that the technology is merely a tool to support us for how we live. And very often we have turned these tools, these devices, into ends in themselves, right? But they are merely tools to support us in living our lives. And so, no, tech is absolutely a good thing. I all for innovations in technology, but with the good, there's also harm that we have to be aware of. And I want us to be very vigilant in what these harms are, but to also consider that we can take action and we can do things about it.
Right. Absolutely. Gloria, thank you so much for sharing. And do you have any final thoughts for our listeners about the concept of attention and digital technology and well-being?
Yeah, so I would just like to emphasize that I am an optimist. I do believe that people can take back control over their attention. Understand that we are human. It's not possible to focus for extended periods of time, which a lot of people will tell you, if you can't focus for hours at length, there's something wrong with you. It's not how humans are built, right? Our attention has peaks and valleys. We have a rhythm of attention, and we need to be aware of that. And we need to realize that when our attention starts to go into this valley, it's time to take a break and it's time to replenish. We have limited attentional resources, and it's very important that we do things to replenish and restore those resources. Taking breaks, having quiet time, meditating, contemplating, these are all things that we can do to help restore ourselves and maintain our well-being.
That is a great reminder about the peaks and valleys of our attention. And those of us who try to power through and ignore those signals. Gloria, tell our listeners how they can reach you and learn more about you and your work.
Yes, so you can reach me at my website, www.gloriamark.com. I do have a book where I have described everything we've talked about today. It's called Attention Span. And you can go to my website and you can find out how you can access it. It's on Amazon or your favorite bookstore. I also want to mention that I have a weekly Substack where I write about these topics, and this is called The Future of Attention. And so you can, I invite you to subscribe to my Substack. It's free. And, every week I cover a different topic related to technology, our attention, and our well-being.
Oh, wonderful. I'll put links to those in the show notes to make it easier for folks to find those resources. Gloria, thank you so much for taking time today. It's been so enlightening.
Oh, it was my pleasure.
Thank you for listening. I hope you got as much out of this conversation as I did. So if you'd like to learn more about me, Manya Chilinsky, I work with organizations to help understand how to create environments where people can thrive after difficult life experiences. And I do this through talks and consulting. I'm a survivor of mass violence, and I use my experience to help leaders learn about resiliency, compassion, and trauma-sensitive leadership, to build strategies to enable teams to thrive and be engaged amidst difficulty and turmoil. If this is something you want to learn more about, visit my website, www.manyachilinsky.com, or email me at manya@manyachilinsky, or stop by my social media on LinkedIn and Twitter. Thanks so much.